A while back, I had an office food thief targeting me, and because I was unable to let that slide, I took things into my own hands. Now, a couple of things about me that made it really suck to have a food thief at work. I have a lot of food allergies, so I can't just get lunch at the cafeteria or at any other nearby restaurant. I also have a new baby who I happen to be breastfeeding, one who I pump for when I'm at work. You know how hungry pregnant people are? Yeah, the caloric requirement for breastfeeding is about 200 calories higher. I am always hungry. And because I have a new baby, half the time I don't manage to show up at work with a packed lunch. I either run out of time to pack one, or if I did happen to remember to make it, I inevitably forgot it on the counter. My solution to all of this was to leave lots of non-perishable snacks in my office. Also, a lot of candy, because I also have a 3-year-old and therefore work is the only place that I can shovel Skittles into my mouth without a little hand extending into my field of vision and a tiny little voice saying, "Please?" Snacks that were specifically free of my allergens, some of which were specialty foods because of this. The type of specialty food that just doesn't taste as good as the food that contains the allergen, yet also costs twice as much. Because I'm not getting a lot of sleep right now, I deserve nice things. And because I'm not getting a lot of sleep right now, when I first came back from maternity leave, I assembled my snack hoard and started having things go missing. I genuinely thought that I may have just been losing my mind though. Boxes of candy were running out faster than I thought I was eating them. I'd come in the morning and things wouldn't be where I'd left them. At one point, I brought a bag of chips to work, folded the rim of the bag down so I wasn't plunging my arm elbow deep into a grease pit, and then put a bag clip on it when I went home. The next morning when I showed back up, the bag was unrolled and reclipped. I went, wow, I must be more tired than I thought. I rolled the bag back down and the next morning, it was just unrolled again. Things like that, almost every day. Things that would make me go, wow, this post-baby brain is worse than I thought. And then I got the flu. I got the flu when I was out for an entire week. Left behind at the office was an almost full box of Enjoy Life cookies, which are not enjoyable, but are free from all major allergens, and are also $5 a box for like 12 sad little sand pies with some cinnamon on top. I ate one row of these cookies, and then I was out of the office for a week, not eating any of my snack hoard. But someone else was. Because when I came back to the office, opened up my box of cookies, I found one sad little cinnamon top sand pie. And upon further examination, the one box of candy that had been opened was nowhere to be found. And on top of all of that, the thief had done me the courtesy of opening an entirely new box for me. Except that they actually followed the push here to open instructions instead of just ripping one end of the box open like I do. Which they should know damn well at this point because they've been stealing from me for 2 goddamn months. The combination of these two things, the sheer freaking audacity it takes to open a new box so you can continue stealing from someone, on top of the consumption of almost a whole box of specialty cookies that aren't even good, enraged me enough that after going to my boss and getting some vague promises about checking if the security cameras in my wing of the building are functional or not, I went straight to Amazon and ordered myself a nanny cam. Not for my baby, for my snack hoard. Conveniently, it arrived the day before Valentine's Day. I set it up on top of a file cabinet looking down at my desk. On the desk, I laid out a fantastic spread of bait snacks. I got all my thief's favorites, and then I took it one step further. I bought myself a Valentine heart, broke the seal to make it more inviting, and then left it out on my desk. The next morning, I came in to some very obvious snack carnage. My thief had slowly been getting more brazen. I mean, again, who opens a new box of something and opens it differently than the person they're stealing from? But this was just on another level. Individually wrapped things had been dumped out of their boxes. Bits of packaging had been thrown away, and yep, they'd definitely eaten some of the Valentine's candy. For shame, office thief. Don't you know that's from someone who loves me? I played back my video. All was quiet throughout most of the evening, and I was just watching the shadows lengthen as the sun slowly set through the hallway window. Well, after minutes of watching, and shortly before midnight, the night janitor arrived. He went right ahead and took a 12-minute break in my office, sitting in my chair, feet kicked up, eating my food. I started taking screenshots. I got him shoveling candy into his mouth with full palm to lips intensity, pouring things out onto the desk to pick his favorite flavors, not even bothering to put them back where he found them. And yeah, confirmed, eating my damn Valentine's candy. Screenshots went directly to my boss in an email. I went directly to my boss's door to hover and grin and ask if he'd read my email. I got assurances of a strongly worded email to the cleaning company and the barring of this particular employee from our place of business. I was also tactfully asked to please take my unauthorized spy camera home, which I did. Now, I thought this was over until the girl who works the concession stand stopped by to thank me. Apparently, the food thief would start his shift just as she was closing down for the night and would often try to get free coffee, in addition to creepily conversing with her. Then one of the reception staff came by with the same sentiment. I'd never met the guy face to face, but apparently as a woman, it was not a fun experience to have. I'd shown my screenshots to a few coworkers, in part because the topic of who's eating OP's food had become office gossip by this point, and word had spread fast. I work an earlier shift, so I didn't recognize the guy, but people whose shifts overlapped with his, they did. I hadn't told my husband about what I'd done because when I came home raging about the blatant theft that had gone on while I had the flu, his only response had been, "You really shouldn't be leaving food at work then." But when I came home with the nanny cam and explained where and why I'd gotten it, his reaction surprised me. "You know, I think this is the first time I've seen you stand up for yourself. I'm proud of you." You know what, Reddit? I'm proud of me too. I've heard this from others, and I've come to believe it too. Nobody likes a lunch thief, and I had one of the most aggressive right there at my office. There were rumors for a few months leading up to the inciting incident of someone going around and taking people's lunches. Just about every day, someone different would complain that their lunch came up missing. It even happened to me once or twice, but I figured, hey, it's a big office. A few people are probably just careless and grab the wrong lunch out of the refrigerator, probably too embarrassed to bring it back. Or someone else packs their lunch and they don't know what's in there, so it's not obvious that they have the wrong one. There are plenty of logical explanations. Most people just brought brown bags with their names on it anyway, or identical Rubbermaid Tupperware with a little piece of labeled tape on the side. I could see how it would be easy enough to mix up. I had accidentally grabbed the wrong lunch once or twice, but I'd noticed before I got it open. I thought I was just more careful, or even just not as busy as some of the other people in our building. However, other coworkers weren't as forgiving, and a quorum made complaints to HR. This group was entirely blown off. Personally, at the time, I thought it was all much ado about nothing. But that's where my story begins. My wife enrolled in a French cooking class online, and just about every day, I was bringing fancy gourmand leftovers in for lunch. You'd think I was picking up a to-go bag from a Michelin-starred bistro on the way in each morning. She really threw herself into the coursework. There were no problems for about 2 weeks, maybe 3, until one day, my lunch went missing. Considering what delicacies I had to look forward to, I was plenty miffed. But I did a once-over around the break room and didn't see anyone eating my food, so I figured someone grabbed my bag by accident earlier, saw how good things looked, and realizing it was their lucky day, just didn't bring it back to the fridge. I wrote the mysterious stranger off as an asshole, but accepted the loss and looked forward to dinner that night instead. Next day, I write my name big and bold on my lunch, jam the bag into the back of the fridge, and feel peace of mind. I get there come break time, and to my surprise, it's gone yet again. Now, I was even more upset than the day before, but I figured that it was just some stroke of bad luck, and left it at that. I mean, what else could I really do in the moment? However, the third day, out of an abundance of caution, I kept my lunch at my desk with me. A pain because I had to eat it fairly early in the day to avoid spoilage, but at least I know where it was. Well, at some point during the morning, I got up to take care of some business down the hall, and when I came back, yeah, my lunch was gone. Unfortunately, that didn't help me narrow it down much at all because my desk is centrally located, so everyone's constantly passing by. At that point, there was no possibility of the theft being arbitrary, so I went to HR and filed my own complaint. Their response, practically verbatim, was, "Employees' lunches are their personal property, and the company is not responsible for lost or stolen personal items." The following day, my wife packed a cream-based soup that really had to be refrigerated. I was passing by the break room to check on my lunch practically every 5 minutes. Well, somehow it still managed to disappear. I was irate at this point and returned to HR and absolutely blew my top. The best they could do was send a memo around about remembering to check the name on your lunch when you remove it from the fridge. But they made very clear that it was a routine memo and in no way related to my complaints, which were not their jurisdiction. So, not an admission of responsibility because, again, my lunch was my own personal problem. The only suitable alternative to packing a lunch available in the building are these wretched shrink-wrapped ham and cheese sandwiches from a vending machine. They've been marinating in the heat for God knows how long, and the bread is as stale as corkboard. The meat is rancid, and there's a gluey mayo smushed into the center. It's a relic of the old office tenants, I'm pretty sure. I vented daily to my wife, but her only idea was to start bringing a regular sandwich and apple again, in order to dissuade the thief and get him to move on to others' lunches. So, determined to prevent this low-life scum from downgrading the quality of my lunch, I hatched an elaborate plan. That's when the pandemic hit, and I forgot pretty much about this entire saga. I worked remotely for months and months. Then we all returned to the office. And after all that had happened globally, lunch revenge was basically the last thing on my mind. However, I got to the break room my first day back, frustrated from having to wear a button-up and tie after months of working in pajamas, sore from my desk chair, and exhausted from small talk, only to find, you guessed it, my lunch was gone yet again. This was a particularly sore point for me because my wife and I divorced between my last lunch at work and the present one, so I didn't appreciate being reminded of any past threads involving her. I pretty much flew into a blind rage at this point, especially seeing that stupid, worthless memo about checking the lunch bag names posted in the break room, feeling so helpless and so hungry, and quite alone as it was me and my lunch against the world. I stormed out and was determined to return the next day with a plan. So I came in the following day with an empty lunch bag, and checking closely to make sure that no one was watching, I switched the contents of the HR person's lunch bag into my own. So now their lunch appeared to be my lunch. They packed a regular brown bag, so I just discarded that and I left. Then I waited. I knew this was a pretty big gamble because it was contingent on the theory that the thief was avoiding me while having lunch, but not wary of anyone else. So they'd likely eat out in the open if there were no risk of bumping into me. So I made a big show of going around the office announcing that I was heading out for a meeting and I wouldn't be back until at least 3 p.m. I even went to the trouble of moving my car out of the lot to a space 2 streets over, where I then sat in my car and worked remotely for several hours before sneaking into the building up the back stairway. I then sat in the stairwell just outside the break room, where you can hear chatter but can't be seen, and after about 20 to 30 minutes of waiting, I heard it. The sweetest sound I'll ever hear in the office. "What the heck, Kyle? That's my lunch." "No, it's not your name on the bag." "Give me that." I'm assuming the HR person grabs the bag and sees my name. "Yeah, Kyle, why don't you grab your things and let's head to my office for a chat." The HR rep later called me in as well and said they were aware of my break room hijinks, but it was obvious that the point still came across loud and clear. They warned me that it was a violation of policy to move another employee's lunch. It took every ounce of self-control for me to keep from retorting, "I thought our lunches were our personal property, and the company wasn't responsible for them being lost or taken." They informed me they'd located the thief and things would be handled accordingly. But better than whatever write-up they might be able to issue Kyle, his reveal as a lunch thief occurred in front of the entire break room. So word quickly spread as to who had been stealing everyone's lunches earlier last year, and he's now officially the office pariah. It's kind of funny because Kyle was also in line for a promotion. Well, that promotion is indefinitely off the table for him. I also earned brownie points for exposing him, though I'm more than satisfied with that being attributed to HR. At the end of the day, I didn't do this for credit, or even the sweet revenge that came with it. I did all this to get my lunches back. I'd say mission accomplished, because none of my lunches have gone missing since this day. Back in the day, I worked as an independent IT consultant and was hired on along with another independent to subcontract on a team for a major consulting house. We'll call it CH. Everyone else on the team was a CH employee. The two of us were not supposed to tell the client that we weren't a part of CH, but the client figured it out pretty fast because we independents were doing most of the work, while CH's code monkeys were busy filling out spreadsheets all day and going on team building exercises, but I digress. The project ran past its initial deadline and my contract expired. I stayed on a week-to-week basis as a professional courtesy to get the project finished because I liked the client, if not the team. Unfortunately, the CH project manager was booked somewhere else for his next gig, and they brought in a new guy to replace him. We'll call him David Stress. David flew in on a Monday morning to get the project handed off to him, and immediately started pissing on everything to mark his territory. He was derogatory and belittling to the team. He liked to raise his voice. I was working in my office. Well, actually a closet with folding tables that I shared with 3 other team members. And I didn't hear what he was saying out in the main room, but I could sure hear his tone. Then he rushed into the office and demanded, "How are we doing X specific payroll-related conversion task?" I said, "We're using Program Z." He waved his hand dismissively and scoffed. "That's stupid. Program Z won't work for this. You need to do something else." The other independent was in the room at the time, and she saw me coming up out of my chair. She told me later she thought I was going to deck him. I knew he was full of because I wrote Program Z. It was custom code for this project, and he had no way of knowing what it would or wouldn't do. The guy was just trying to bully me and apparently be the alpha dog. I did not deck him. Instead, I went to the client's payroll manager with whom I'd been working closely for months and who was driving the client side of the project. I laid it on the line. I said, "Look, I know you know I don't work for CH. I'm here on an independent contract. That contract is up, and I've been working here week to week just to get you guys through." She told me that she was aware of this. Okay, so this new guy, David Stress, he's a bully and a blowhard, and I won't work with him. I have no contract at this point, and with him running the project, I won't be back next week. I'm not asking you to do anything specific about it. I'm just letting you know as a courtesy so you can plan to transition my work to someone else. She sat back in her chair, thought for a moment and said, "Okay, thanks for letting me know." 2 hours later, David Stress was removed from his new position. The payroll manager, faced with losing the one technical guy on the team who actually knew what was going on with a very complicated payroll system, called CH and said, "We don't want this new guy. You take him back." CH rearranged some things to keep the original project manager with the project. The funniest part of the whole thing was that CH had scheduled a welcome dinner for David at a posh steakhouse that evening. Rather than create the further embarrassment of canceling that dinner, they actually went ahead with it, only as a farewell dinner for David, who had been on the project for less than 1 full day. It was fun to watch him try to put on a brave face for that, especially when everyone could see the embarrassment behind his eyes. The project went on as planned. It was completed a few weeks after all of this, and upon completion, I get a handshake and a pat on the back from the payroll manager of the client. She's happy that we could pull all of this together and asked if I would be open to contracting with them directly in the next quarter when they continue expanding operations. I was thrilled to let her know I would be open to such a thing. Well, a week or 2 later, I'm perusing LinkedIn looking for a specific contact that I'd worked with before. But as the stars are known to align, I stumble across the profile of one David Stress. David's profile picture has that little banner on it that says he's open to work. This intrigues me, and before I know it, I'm reading post after post from David spanning the last few months. David is not short on complaints, work stories that clearly didn't happen, as well as motivational quotes. But what I was able to parse through was the fact that I guess CH didn't like having one of their project managers sent home with his tail tucked between his legs. Yet instead of eating a little crow, David tried to disparage the client and the work itself, essentially claiming that this was beneath him as a manager. Thus, David's scope of work for CH was then pivoted to not involve facing clientele, directing team members, and the like. Essentially, David's new role involved sitting quietly in an office, handling admin work of other managers out there, and wearing the scarlet letter of being only a project manager in title. The next week's post painted out where this was heading. Quote-unquote, time off from the office in order to maximize effort when he was back behind his desk, asking for a roll call of clients and people he worked well with in the past. And then finally the post saying that he had mutually decided to part from CH and was now looking forward to the next professional chapter in his life. Okay, so David got fired. You can try to PR that ish all you want, but you know you got canned. I have a hard time thinking that the interaction he had with me was a one-off. David was likely used to barging in and getting his way with staff members willing to capitulate. But that's not me. So when he got rightful pushback and the consequences for his actions, he didn't know how to handle it and spiraled his way right into being jobless. Good luck with that in this economy, big dog.